Congressman, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. Last week, a day after the raid on the president's home, FBI agents showed up when I was traveling with my family. My wife and our two small children, my in-laws, extended family, showed up and demanded my cell phone. They said they were going to image it. They were not going to search it. And then they eventually did return it. But, Maria, what I think this is about is intimidating anyone who refuses to bend the knee to the narrative. And you know, I don't know exactly what your questions are going to be, but there's been no accountability. James Comey, the director of the FBI, used classified information improperly to get a second special counsel. No accountability for that. The chairman of the Intel Committee changed the president's speech and entered it into the record, created an impeachment trial. Again, no accountability. You name it across the board, whether it's John Eastman, whether it's Scott Perry, whether it's President Trump, and with passing a bill that will pay for hiring of 87,000 IRS agents, tyranny is going to come right into everyone's living room very, very shortly.
Well, this is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, here you are vacationing with your in-laws, your elderly in-laws and your children, and then you are taken aside by the FBI to ask for your personal cell phone. Obviously, they knew where you were. You're the head of the Freedom Caucus. How did that feel? What were you thinking when suddenly you're on a trip with your family and you're pulled aside by FBI agents?
Well, Maria, it feels awful. Look, we have always supported law enforcement. I always have. We have revered the FBI, but this is an abuse of power. And of course, they're using these tactics to intimidate people, coerce people. And, you know, it's not something that anyone aspires to. But Maria, people that bleach bit their phones and hit them with hammers, smash them with hammers and those type of things have something to hide. People that keep the same phone a year and a half after the election aren't worried about what's on their phone. And so that's me. But apparently they want to destroy me politically. They want to destroy, like I said, anybody that doesn't bend the knee, that isn't intimidated, that isn't parroting the narrative is now subject to these kind of third world banana republic tactics politically. And that's what you're seeing is this horrific overuse, abuse of the DOJ and the instruments of federal power.
This is incredibly disturbing. I want to get on to other issues with you, in particular China, but real quick, tell me about the Freedom Caucus. Was this part of it, that you are the chairman of the Freedom Caucus? What is the Freedom Caucus? Tell our audience what we need to know about it.
So the Freedom Caucus stands for the hundreds of the millions of Americans who feel like Washington has left them behind, that the people that say one thing in the district and then go back to Washington and don't vote that way. We do exactly what we said we're going to do. And the Freedom Caucus, of course, myself, I have issued articles of impeachment regarding Merrick Garland and his targeting of parents for visiting school board meetings. So, yes, this might be, again, having the Freedom Caucus, those members, again, bend the knee, submit to the will of the establishment or else.
Well, look, while all of this is going on and this intimidation by the FBI and the DOJ to you, on President Trump, on anybody else who supports him, we are looking at evidence of influence peddling in plain sight, and evidence that the CCP is trying to overtake America and Joe Biden is not doing anything about it. Congressman, we now know that there are reports that the president will meet with Xi Jinping in November. He is considering lifting the tariffs on China. We know of all of the reporting and the Senate report that Hunter Biden and Jim Biden took in tens of millions of dollars from Chinese-controlled companies. What are you expecting from this meeting, and what are your thoughts on what we see actually happening in terms of disturbing things like the influence peddling operation coming out of the Biden family?
Thanks so much for the question, Maria. I expect that the president will capitulate to the Communist Party of China. It should be pretty apparent to anybody that's been alive for the past 5 years that the Biden family is completely compromised by the Communist Party of China. It's been a grift for a very long time. And instead of going after the Communist Party of China, they're happy to change the text words of Jim Jordan that were on his phone. So that's all a distraction to keep the American people from focusing on what really is actionable intelligence and actual evidence, like you said, in plain sight, that the DOJ should be pursuing right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at Biden's China policy as we know it, and they've accepted $31 million in deals and money from China, 10% for the big guy we have in black and white on an email, fails to demand any investigation into the COVID origins. You know, Xi Jinping said no, and Joe Biden said okay. It fails to confront him on the fentanyl. We've got 100,000 Americans dead from overdoses, and the fentanyl is coming from China.
Right.
And the China initiative is gone. He's considering lifting tariffs on imports. He even sold oil from America's strategic reserve to China, and he's pushing these electric vehicles and solar panels, batteries, all made in China. And then there's Iran.
With slave labor.
You're on House
with slave labor, Maria. Yeah, it's all made with slave labor from. Yeah, and then there's Iran, of course, countenancing the largest terrorist state on the planet, who are responsible for the untimely and just horrific deaths of thousands of service members in Iraq and abroad. Countenancing a deal that would make the greatest terrorist state on the planet a nuclear-armed, ballistic missile-capable, having the delivery system on the doorstep of Israel, and of course within reach of the United States with ballistic capability. Continuing to work with these people, and not only that, but lift tariffs, buy their oil, and continue with these discussions. It is outrageous, and it is bad for, obviously, it is antithetical to American national security.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm stumped as to why this administration continues to negotiate, even if indirectly, with Iran, while they have a fatwa on the back of Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, and John Bolton. And, of course, this weekend, the horrific situation of author Salman Rushdie, stabbed while he was about to give a speech in upstate New York, 33 years after Iran called for his death. So they're still calling for all of these people's deaths, in particular, former Trump officials like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, and yet they're still negotiating with Iran to get back into a nuclear deal. And then, of course, there is the border, wide open border. I just went to the border last week for a 5th time, and we've got massive flow of illicit narcotics coming in. We went to the crimes lab, and we saw how the drug cartels are running the entry into America, and they're luring young kids by making pills colorful, but lacing it with fentanyl. No comment from Joe Biden.
Not a thing. Wide open border, 200,000 a month. Of course, the fentanyl that you talked about, they're acting like these are just standard run-of-the-mill drug overdoses. They are poisoning. They are poisonings being facilitated by the Communist Party of China and the cartels. The cartels have absolute operational control of the southern border, not only flooding with illegals, criminals, but also the fentanyl that's poisoning people across America. This, again, is an outrage. And, of course, any of the things that you outlined, any one single issue with Iran, whether it was Pompeo, Bolton, or Salman Rushdie, is enough for America to walk away and continue to list Iran as a state sponsor of terror and treat them as such, treat them as the enemy of international order that they are.
Well, all of this while they are looking for you, and you are traveling with your elderly in-laws. How many FBI agents were there, by the way, when they seized your cell phone, when they came over you when you were with your elderly in-laws? Yeah,
apparently it takes 3. They said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "Yes." How did you find me? Of course, I already know the answer, but I wanted them to admit it. And the gentleman, the agent, had a smirk on his face. He said, "That's what we do." But Maria, when I asked them to return the phone by contacting my chief of staff instead of bothering my family, they didn't honor that. They said they would. They didn't do that. And then when I asked him why he couldn't honor his commitment, he said, "We couldn't find her."
All right, Congressman, we'll be watching this. This is all very disturbing. It's not funny at all. We thank you so much for walking us through it. Thank you, Congressman Scott Perry in Pennsylvania.